going down to flush them out.
Welcome to the Hearts of Men podcast, a journey into the depths of men's hearts where courage meets vulnerability and wisdom embraces integrity. In a world that often measures a man by his outer achievements, this podcast dares to explore what truly defines a man of character. We unpack the challenges and triumphs that shape men's lives, bringing to light stories of resilience, compassion, and unshakable faith. We believe that the heart of a man is a treasure trove of untold stories, powerful lessons, and profound wisdom. Through authentic dialogues and insightful discussions, we aim to unlock these treasures, one story at a time. So, whether you're seeking guidance, inspiration, or simply a moment of reflection, you're in the right place. Get ready to be challenged, inspired, and transformed. And now, to guide you through this journey of discovery, please welcome your host, a visionary leader and a true catalyst for change, Dwayne Dwyer, but we affectionately know him as the Mindset Coach.
Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of the Hearts of Men. We're your hosts for this evening's conversation. My name is Dwayne Dwyer, go by the Mindset Coach, and I am joined by my brothers Garfield Martin, the Uncle Jr., the Consistency Coach, Mr. Rolling down the street, Mr. Roland Walker, poor man's Dr. Phil, Mr. Shift Happens, and Brother Tuami Gaddis, son of Timothy, the Available Man. Gentlemen, how are you doing on this beautiful Friday evening?
I'm well. A little tired. But you know, I get a burst of energy to talk to my brothers on Friday night, so I'm ready for it.
Good to go. Got my hat on, so I'm good to go.
I'm just glad to see three brothers up here with me. You know, it's just it's a better feeling. I don't know what it is, but when it's like, you know, we doing that whole Voltron thing, or you know, we coming together, I'm gonna enjoy this.
Yeah, me too. And you know, as always, I look forward to sharing in conversation with you guys. Just like we all look forward to sharing in conversation with the livest chat in social media. So again, we want to make sure that we recognize you by name because we appreciate you guys being here. You could be any place else, but you chose to be here, and we do not take that lightly. So that being said, welcome to the show and good to see you, Nick D, Crystal Everett, His Divine Appointment, Lisa Keys, Chosen One, Miss Charlotte Jordan. Who else am I missing in here? Miss Maya Jenkins Hobson, and anybody else out there who has joined us, whether you're on YouTube, whether you're on Facebook, Instagram, or even LinkedIn, get in the comment section and let us know that you're here because we like to acknowledge you by name on this platform because we appreciate you being here. Also, before we get started, tomorrow morning, part 2, the Hearts of Women, joint conversation with the Hearts of Men, talking about submission. So you do not want to miss that. And we're all looking forward to that conversation. So if there's anything else that anybody need to share before we get started?
I'm good to go.
All right, well, let's get this party started then. Oops, I'm sorry.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go.
It's okay. What if everything you believe about your feelings, that they're honest, uncontrollable, or even weapons of truth, is actually trapping you in conflict? That the anger you wield, the blame you place, or the pain you perform might be the very chains keeping you from real freedom? Welcome to the Hearts of Men. Today, we rip open the uncomfortable truth about how we distort reality to serve our hidden agendas. We're confronting how 71% of adults admit to weaponizing feelings while claiming to live in reality is often just a power play in disguise, or how Freud's warning about buried emotions predicts arguments you haven't even yet had. We'll reveal why Marcus Aurelius declared perspective a lie, how victim language narcotizes empathy, and the science proving your brain can't tell manipulation from authentic pain. Most importantly, we'll map your exit from this suffocating maze. That said, the countdown to your radical honesty starts in. That was supposed to be the countdown.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go.
All right, very well. Listen, as you already know, the topic of tonight's conversation is the truth about you, your feelings, and reality. And you know how we like to do, we like to start things off. I don't really think we need to define anything. I think we kind of understand the definition of you, the definition of feelings, and ultimately the definition of reality. So I really want to kind of just jump in with a very interesting question to get us started here. How would you describe the interconnectedness of you, your feelings, and reality?
I'll start. I'll jump on the grenade first tonight. Um, so when it comes to me, I see myself, I view myself as a continuous evolving, like changing, like not necessarily minute to minute, but from where I was to where I want to go, the constant journey of life. And with life comes more knowledge, more wisdom, more understanding, more information. And so that's kind of the me part. My feelings, I'm gonna come back to that. Well, actually, no, I'm gonna stay right here. My feelings are valid, whatever they are at the time. They're my feelings. But when it comes to my feelings, I don't make decisions based off of necessarily my feelings. I think a little more thought goes into it, some logic. Not necessarily as moved much by my feelings, but I am aware of my feelings and try to control them when I need to. And then the reality of it is this: things change. Going back to me, life is always changing. What may be the reality right now may not necessarily be the reality, you know, down the road with more understanding. What my reality was and what I thought life was and my feelings was at 25 is my reality now is different, um, from the perspective of who I am and my feelings in general. So that's kind of my interconnectedness of you, your feelings, and reality.
Okay, just want to make sure I heard you correct. You said
Mhm.
reality can change throughout the course of time.
My reality did what I thought was real at some time. I may not now, and then vice versa. I think, yeah.
Okay, so as we're moving forward, the question I want to pose you to consider, and we'll come back around to it. Are you really talking about reality when you say that? Okay.
I,
Um,
okay.
yeah, just think about that before, and then we'll come back to you.
hmm
Roland or Gaddy, what you got?
Thought I heard him clicking. Okay, interconnecting. I think that reality is what it is. It's the same. Now, how we feel about it, that may change during the process of education, during the process of new information, so forth and so on. So your feelings about something will always be the lens that you see the reality through. So that's why that can always change.
So my feelings is what I see reality through.
Yes, how you feel, how you see things, because we're only talking about feelings. So yeah, when you're looking through the lens of feeling, how I feel, how I view something, how I see it as, it comes through that. So now when I'm looking at reality, my life's experiences and everything that impacts how I feel about everything about reality is exactly what it is. That's why it can change, because as I gain new information or I grow or I, learn, I can see things differently. So it's not the reality that changes, it's me.
Okay. Gather, what you got?
Okay, I see what everybody's saying. So for me, the interconnectedness of the three, you, your feelings, and reality is, I think the interconnected part is behavior, right? Uh, how how we act according to, right? And so for me, when I say you, when I hear you, I hear genuine behavior. This is my genuine responses, my genuine action, my genuine thoughts, feelings, manipulated and manipulative behavior or thoughts. And then reality is how those things affect me, my goals, and the people around me, i.e., my family, community, friends, and so forth and so forth.
Hmm. Interesting. I got some questions. Garfield, let's come back to you, bro. About what the question I asked you. You muted, man.
I said, can you repeat that question again?
Yeah, you made mention that reality changes, and I asked you if reality changes, are we really talking about reality?
I don't know. I guess in my mind, I'm thinking that we are. At some point, my reality was I'm married with 3 kids at some point. Now I'm in a different situation. Life has progressed and moved on. Now my reality is I'm married with, a dog. That's kind of what my reality is. I don't know. Maybe that's just life and circumstances. I don't know.
And so wouldn't that mean that your perception of reality changed, not reality itself? Because now with 3 kids and married, you view it as a husband and a father versus viewing it as a single man. So your perception, it changed.
But I'm
If
in a
if
totally
I'm hearing what you're
situation.
saying, right, that's what I hear you describing.
No, no, I guess what I'm saying is, you know, 15 years ago I was married to a woman, and that's the woman who I had all my children by. In 2025, I'm out of that marriage. My reality is a little bit different now, and I have, maybe I'm interchanging life, but my reality is different. You know, the I'm with somebody different now. We've been together for 11 years, married, no children together, and we have a dog. So now that's my reality. So in my mind, my reality changed. But I could be misusing the word reality, and I'm okay with having my perspective or perception adjusted based off more information.
Rolling your thoughts.
I think that, like I said before, reality, my perception builds my reality. It's how I see it. It doesn't matter what someone else sees as reality for them because of their information, but the information that I have at the time, like if I'm happy, if I'm sad, uh, my whatever I see coming forward, because I'm looking through that lens, it's gonna paint the picture of happiness, of sadness, or whatever. So my reality is gonna be skewed because of that, and it's not like it's because it's simply because it's coming through my mind and my lens. So whether it changes or you change, I think it's a you change thing and your lens change. You may see new information.
Yeah, I get what you. I'm sorry, go ahead, girlfriend.
I don't I don't know if I'm rocking with that. And here's why. I don't think my reality changes based off my feelings. Like my reality is what it is. You know, if I don't feel sad or upset or whatever, like my reality don't change. You know, I still gotta get up and do whatever I gotta do, regardless of whatever I going through, good, bad, or indifferent with my wife. My reality is still the same. It's not going to change just because my feelings change. But again, that's what, you know, if I'm hearing you correctly, I'm hearing that my reality, that your reality changes based off of your feelings. And I'm in opposition of that statement. I don't think it's like that. I think my reality stays the same regardless of my feelings.
So I don't want to move from where we are about reality first. That's where we're gonna
Okay.
go next. I'm with you. But what I was gonna say is I understand exactly what you're saying. Um, the objective truth about what you see in your space right now compared to what it was, you say 15 years ago, it's
Mm-hmm.
different. It's different. It's not the exact same thing in your space.
Mm-hmm.
So your reality, based upon what you're saying, has been altered from what it was then to what it is now. I get that. Um, and I'm not necessarily saying that that's not reality. That's not what I'm saying at all. I think what Roland is making reference to is more of a perspective, and creating that reality through that perspective, and I get that as well. But what I don't want to do is cross contaminate those two ideologies as we're talking about just reality alone.
Okay.
If that makes sense, and if
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying goes against what you're saying, by all means, say it a different way, and maybe I can better understand it. No.
No,
I'm good.
yeah, because I'm not saying that. Like I said in the first statement, reality is what it is. But us as humans, now we may be in the same space at the same time, but simply because of my experiences and your experiences, we see things differently. That's why you can have these negative people. They come to work and they're kicking their dog, they're kicking their desk, and I hate this and I hate that, simply because of the things that are going on in their lives. So their reality is skewed to the point that everything is negative. Whereas you woke up with peaches and milk on the side of your bed ready to eat and flowers and everything, and you walking on rose petals. Now your view of things is gonna be like, man, what's wrong with him? So it's not that the reality changed, but my reality changes because of my perception. That's why when people say my reality and my this, they're not looking at the whole picture. They're just looking through it through their lens. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Okay. I got
And
you.
that's more of a perception of reality, not necessarily
Right.
reality itself, because reality itself takes into account the entirety of what reality is, not just the lens in which I see it through. So that's kind of like my addition to what you're saying. Gaddy, you look, you about to say something.
Now I think you kind of hit it because I'm looking at reality is reality for everybody. How it looks, how reality looks based upon my conditions is different than yours, and my conditions can change, but the reality is not going to change. But my perception of life in this reality that we live in is adjusted based upon my experiences, my conditions, my situation. So and that's why I kind of, when you said cross contamination, but I think that's why it seemed like such a thin line, because yes, of course, when things change, my feelings about things change. You know, I remember there was a day where I couldn't see how people can view, and I'm not changing the conversation, but how people can view politics from this hand. Like, you got to see it from this hand because we're in this condition and situation. But I saw it because I was in that situation and condition. Now, when my condition changed, I'm like, oh, I can understand how people like this can view this, because it affects these people a little differently. So yeah, I want people who ain't got to be helped, but I also don't want to be taken advantage of because I work hard for what I got. So I understand, I can see both realities, and I quotation that on purpose. I can see both realities, but it's one reality, but the conditions of the people are different. So the way they view it is slanted. I hope that made sense.
No, it makes perfect sense to me. That's why I say reality, it is what it is, right? But again, your perception of it is the thing that looks different to you. And I think that's the space. How I feel about what I perceive is something totally different, but I don't want to, move too far ahead because that's exactly where we're going next. And so that being said, the first topic that we're going to uncover is all about emotional manipulation. Now, the assertion here is that we tend to weaponize feelings to
Mm.
control others. I'll say that part again. We tend to weaponize feelings to control others. And a famous quote that go along with this comes out of Psychology Today, which states that emotional manipulation is the control of another person's feelings through deception. And a good data point to support this, 71% of adults admit to using guilt or emotional pressure to influence someone within the past year. So, gentlemen, that being said, the question that I have here is, have you ever experienced or used emotional exaggeration to influence an outcome or avoid accountability? And if so, what did it look like?
Man, I like everything you just said and all into this question, because that's why when we got to feelings, my response was it is manipulated and manipulative behavior, right? Because that's all emotion is, right? My emotions either going to manipulate my behavior or I'm going to use my emotions to manipulate your behavior or your feelings. And have I ever? Um, I hate to say it like this, but you just asked. Only thing you asked me was, have I ever preached a sermon and try to get a move from the congregation? Absolutely. I wanted to hear the amen sometimes. I'm being honest, right? That's how I know what happens sometimes, because you know, and I can hear it when other preachers do it. We try to get, because you don't want to say amen over and over again. Somebody's shouting here. You don't want to say that over and over again. You just want to, you want to move them to that. So you exacerbate a little bit the emotional influence on or aspect of what you're talking about. It's why some people tell stories a certain way. If you're a really good storyteller, you know, especially when you got the attention of people, you can move the emotions with the way you tell the story. To and once you do that, once you grab the emotions of people, it's easy for me now to push my point through that emotion so that you can see through that lens with the hopes of making that lens now your lens.
Have ever experienced or used emotional exaggeration to influence an outcome or avoid accountability? Mine was probably more so to influence an outcome. I'm going to talk about this because I've shared it either here or Coach's Corner before. In my previous marriage, when I was what they call, holy rollers. I was holier than thou. Nobody couldn't tell me anything. So my first wife and I, we was kind of raised up differently when it came to church and how we viewed church and religion and all of those different things. So I remember using some emotional exaggeration and some tactics to kind of influence her to be more, into the word, or more into, not watching Midnight Love. You know what I mean? I'm just being honest. I remember this was in Arizona. I just remember, because of what I wanted, I wanted that, what you hear in church. You got the one parent, on the deacon board, and you got the other one that's a missionary, something like that. The kids is singing, you know what I mean? That's kind of what I wanted. So I would use certain tactics and certain scriptures, and sometimes out of context and without more clarity and understand, to try to manipulate or influence a certain type of outcome. Um, for whatever, I mean, regardless of why, I can come up with a bunch of different excuses on why, but at the end of the day, that's what I wanted. And what it looked like a lot of long conversations. It looked like arguments. It looked like it was chaos. When you're trying to force somebody something or trying to manipulate somebody to be or change a certain type of way, especially when they don't want to, but they're trying to be submissive and trying to do these things, and it just didn't work. You know what I'm saying? And so for me, that's kind of how some things were, and that's kind of how I use exaggeration and emotional exaggeration to try to influence a certain outcome.
I'm gonna use the same study that gave that 71% from the Family Feud, where 100 people were surveyed. Now let me stop. But because I wasn't surveyed, so when they say that, it's like, come on now, probably wasn't people look like me. So I have little hope in things like that. But I would believe that it's like with this statement, I think if you've been in a relationship, it's true. If you've been in a relationship where someone wanted something and then they came to you.
Wait a minute. You move. We're talking about you. Don't move the
Yeah,
goalpost. We're talking about you.
yeah, have you. So yeah, anybody. I think anybody, yes, me. Anybody, that includes me, that has been in a relationship has done or experienced this. And an example would be when, say, your spouse goes to purchase something, and then you have an issue with that, and she brings up something from 7 months ago, and then it's like trying to guilt you, like, oh, well, when you bought this or when you did that. Anytime that's done is exactly what we're talking about here, because you're trying to get me off the point of what's going on right now to focus on something that was done in the past. And now you want me to shut up because you're either getting in your feelings or you're trying to point something out that I may have felt a certain way about then. So yeah, it has happened.
Yeah. The answer is yes. And I mean both of them, to be honest with you. It's I don't care if it was me waking up early in the morning and washing both of the cars and shining them up real quick so I can go hang out with the boys most of the Saturday or whatever. Then knowing when I come back home by 10 o'clock at night, it's going to be a discussion, right? And then get into that discussion like, I don't want to listen to all this. I don't want to hear all that. Why are you making such a big deal out of? I was just with the fellas. You could have called me. You could have come yourself after the fact, right? You could have come and hang out with us yourself. So yeah, we've all done this, right? And I'm standing firm there. We've all done it. Let me say it again. We've all done it. Both sides of it. You've used emotional exaggeration to influence an outcome and avoided a compliment. Everybody is guilty. If you're telling the story from one side, then you're lying. I'm just gonna call a spade a spade. That's just what it is. Everybody is guilty of this. No if, no ands, no buts. I say it like this right here. Here's the best way to look at it. The story that you tell about yourself, if I go ask anybody who was there, would they tell that same story? That's the best way to look at it. Everybody is guilty of this. And until you own that version of yourself, you're still in denial. And that ain't good. So let's move on to the next version, the next conversation, or the next question. How might labeling someone too sensitive be an illusion and actually a power play?
I think one of the things that you do is when you do that, you started kind of shifting your focus um, on the behavior. Um, Man, I'm being guilty of this. So, um, because it's like you're having a discussion. Can I be real out here, folks? Let
Sure.
me see. So, all right. So I've been in situations and been in relationships, and you're trying to have a discussion and trying to have a conversation, and it starts off. It seems like everybody's okay. But then what happens is you started knocking on somebody's door about something that they may or may not be doing, and it may not even be beneficial to the relationship. And then now the other person starts crying or getting upset, and then next thing you know, it's like, stop being so sensitive. And I think that can come off the wrong way, because it's not for me to necessarily determine how someone responds to whatever. At the end of the day, we still need to get through the information. We still need to get through everything. But I think that sometimes it can kind of sound like a some people can see it as it kind of like a power play. You know what I mean? So I just think that when it comes to like the illusion, I think that you start to take away from the conversation, because now you're focused on the person being sensitive or the person being crying, or something like that. So that's kind of where I want to sit at right now.
I think if it were me using language like this, it's me trying to control how that person feels. I'm trying to control their emotions and how they see it, because they're not seeing it like I see it. So I'm trying to dictate the whole conversation to where it fits more aligned with me versus where they may see it. So I'm discounting that person totally.
How can it be a power play? So when I say you're being too sensitive, what I just did was made you very cautious of your behavior. Now, in this exchange, only what I do now is validated, right? And so that in and of itself is the power play, because I just put myself in the position, or I put you in a position first as non-validated, because you can't speak honestly because you're sensitive. Your sensitivity is making you angry. Is what's making you angry. So it's making you respond contrary to what I'm saying, right? Because now I just put that illusion that what I'm saying is true, and you're just mad at it, and so your sensitivity is showing. When you could really be telling the truth from a different perspective, but once I label you, I just put myself in the position in this exchange like I am the validated one. Now what I say is the standard, it's the blueprint. And now you begin to even question the next statement that come out your mouth. Now you questioning how you feel about what I said because you don't want to come across too sensitive.
I'm at an impasse. I'm gonna muddy the waters a little bit. Not that I'm disagreeing with anything you guys are saying, but I also think there's another way that we can look at this as well. See, the illusion is always too sensitive, because now I'm giving a subjective perspective. It might be too sensitive for me. It might be too sensitive for this conversation. So that's kind of like, in my opinion, the power play. But power isn't always bad. It's only bad when we use it against somebody. But if a person is being quote unquote too sensitive, then maybe their interpretation of their emotions in that particular space and time is that they're using those emotions against them, and they may just be simply trying to have a conversation. So, is it possible that the assertion of too sensitive may serve as a defibrillator for the sake of the conversation? Because here's the other side of it. If I need to validate your emotions, there's another conversation that need to be had, and it probably should have been had long before this conversation right here is actually happening. Your thoughts?
I don't think you can. I don't think you can exclude emotions when you're having conversation or when you're having a relationship. I have to allow people to be who they are and respond how they respond. If I'm trying to dictate everything, where you to this and you to that, that's too determined by me. So it puts me at a hierarchy in this relationship already in the communication realm. So now if I say, hey, I think you, if I'm saying what I think, hey, I think you handling this a different way versus you too sensitive. That's just like us talking and then Gaddy saying something. I'll say, dude, you acting like a broad. Now, what he gonna do? He gonna get defensive. So when I'm pointing out something as if I'm higher than you, it's an automatic defense mechanism that's gonna come combative towards that. So the communication won't go any further than an argument.
Maybe. I'm not, like I said, I'm not totally against what you're saying. Maybe. That's not a 100% blanket statement for everybody though, right? And again, it's not that the conversation is emotionless. It should not be saturated with emotions. That's probably what this statement is all about. Again, just looking at a different perspective. Garfield get
Yeah,
it.
yeah, because if coach, I mean, if Roland tell me, hey man, we having a conversation, he's like, hey bro, you been too sensitive, you acting like a broad. Like me, I ain't gonna get defensive. I'm probably gonna check myself. I'm like, dang, am I? You know what I mean? So for me, I wouldn't get defensive. So I get that. Um, but I think that's where it comes down to who you having a conversation with as well. I think the term too sensitive, like Coach said, is very subjective. You know, that's what I agree. That's what someone believes that the other person is. And maybe that conversation maybe shouldn't be had at the time. Or like Coach said, maybe there should have been a conversation had way before this, because you know, if you are being too sensitive, if we can't talk about the dog running in the street, you crying, then you know we got bigger fish to fry, and we need to talk about, you know, how to manage and regulate emotions and stuff like that as well. So I'm picking up what everybody's putting down, and but I ain't pieced it all together yet. So
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't think you muddied the water, uh, because I don't. You didn't say whether it had to be good or bad, but is it a power play? I think it's just it is a power play, whether good or bad, right? Because it's a power play whether I'm regulating the conversation back to where it needs to be, or whether I'm using it to change your perception of how you respond to me. You know, either way, it's still a power play. uh, and I saw it perfectly the other day. And I know I'll be watching stuff. I'm watching Gil and Kwame, and I'm trying not to use their full names because we ain't promoting nobody. But so if you know who they are, watch Gil and Kwame in a conversation. There's a third party in this conversation, but they're trying to interrogate Gil because he took a partnership to start his podcast instead of using his own money and being independent because you know they thought better of him than that. Whatever. Um, and Kwame baiting Gil into reacting. So whenever Gil responds to Kwame, Kwame go, "Well, we're not gonna act like females in here. We're gonna be men." Like you baited the man just so you could try to control his behavior, and now call so some people viewed it as good, some people viewed it as bad. I saw it as bad because you baited him into responding to you just to call him out. But it was a power play. It was a way of saying, hey, I'm in control of this conversation. I'm in control of how it's going to go. Now follow my lead or disappear.
so here's where I'm stuck on, not stuck, but maybe the water got a little muddy for me when I started thinking about more is the power play. And I'm gonna go back to my scenario when I told someone you're being too sensitive. It wasn't I wasn't trying to bully the conversation. I wasn't trying to have a one up. I was just like, probably more out of frustration, was like, darn it, man, like we should be able to have this conversation. You're being too sensitive. It's more like that. I wasn't trying to like have the power, have the control. I just thought that as two grown adults, we should be able to have this conversation, but we can't because you're too much in your feelings. You know what I mean? I'm just like, hey, the dog, and now you waterfalls. And I'm just like, how are we going to ever be able to talk about anything? How are we going to be able to have a conversation? You know what I mean? When every time something comes up, waterworks. You know what I mean? And it's like it wasn't about power. It was about trying to get an issue or something solved in the relationship or whatever it may be. So I don't know if that's some sort of definition of power or not, but my intentions had nothing to do with wanting to have power or control. It was about, we need to be able to talk and have a conversation. But because you don't know how to manage your feelings or regulate your emotions, we can't move further. So is that outside of the lines of the power play, or is that all kind of woven in there with that?
Well, see, that's kind of like the whole point, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's in some shape, form, or fashion, the space of relationship is supposed to be shared.
Mm-hmm.
And there are times when some people they try to get, regardless, depending upon the situation, they try to get so big in the relationship that it tends to suffocate the other person. I do believe that it is, and there should be something done to make that other person aware of their behavior in that point in time. Like his divine appointment has a question, right? And to that question, to this question, could it be? Sure, it could, since the question is asked in that fashion. But your emotions have never set a boundary. You set the boundary. That's the thing. So if there was never a boundary that was established for you to become emotional outside of your perceived boundary, that's not a boundary. Like I think a lot of times we live in a world to where we believe the expression and all thereof, right, is a thing of strength. No, that's not true, right? Hyper anything is not good. You can put whatever you want to put on the backside of hyper, and I guarantee you can say it's not good. Hyper vigilant, hyper emotional, hypersexual, all of that is not good. So when you start talking about the expression of emotions, even the expression of emotions at a certain point becomes bad. So now what you have to do is you have to become emotionally regulated, which you should have been emotionally regulated, all before we even got to the point of this conversation, right? I get it. Everybody is like, well, this is just how I am. Well, go seek counseling, go get some help, go lay on somebody's couch because you need to. I'm sorry. It is what it is. We make excuses for maladaptive behaviors all the time, and we don't necessarily understand what maladaptive behaviors are. So what we'll say is stuff like, that's just how I am, or that's just how I express myself. No, when my son was 3 years old, he expressed himself like that. Not trying to be funny. It is what it is. So it's like me saying something like, hey, calm back up. You're coming in this too hot. Whatever. Is that wrong? I can't say that it's wrong when your emotions is sucking all the air out the room and we can't even get past this point in the conversation because you're hyper emotional. And that's kind of like the point. I'm agreeing it's a power play. But the thing is, do we perceive power as being 100% bad? Can't be. Well, we shouldn't. That's just my
But
thought. Yes.
sometimes can it be, and it can in some instances where the person is inept when it comes to handling that person's emotions, handling that person in an emotional state. So it's like, okay, I don't know what to do with this. So I'm going to say, you're to this because I can't manage it, because I don't know what to do with it. So
But
if you're to something for me, it's like, okay, that's to something for me. Whereas someone else having that conversation would know how to navigate around that and say, okay, and listen and see what's actually being said versus see what's being said through the feelings.
so help me, because I'm genuinely asking a question as the young man on the panel.
Set up, by the
I
way.
Hey, listen, I got 5 more weeks to be in my 30s. So, the young man on the panel. Now, but I agree, yes, with the statement, with the conditions set. But is it my responsibility to handle your emotions?
It's not your responsibility to handle that person's emotions, but if you're in a relationship with that person and you're having conversation and you're trying to communicate, it's your responsibility as the other person on side of that to be able to listen through that without the emotions affecting you. Once it
So,
affects you and you say it's two, it has affected you to the point where I don't want to deal with it.
so I guess where I have the problem with it is is on the flip side, right? For me to listen to what you're saying through your emotions, yes, that's a part of it. But the other part of it is, hey, you're being too sensitive, meaning you can't receive because your emotions is clogging your ears. Because
Gotcha.
now you're listening in the defensive and
Once you say
asking me to
two,
hear
though,
you out,
that's a
but
you thing.
you're not capable of handling your emotions enough to the level that you can hear what I'm articulating.
Right. And then you should articulate that. But once you, it's almost an insult once you say too sensitive.
In this moment,
Because
yes.
it is, because it's something that I can't handle, something that I can't deal with. And I'm looking at it as it's too much for me to deal with. So that's like if somebody go on and do that over there, then come back and holler at me when you control yourself. You know, and I get that. But once I put that two on that other person, saying they're two, they're this, that, and the other, I'm not allowing them to be who they are, where they are.
I'm with Lisa at that point. Hey, let's get a mediator.
Yeah. Listen, I greatly appreciate everybody's perspective. Thank you guys for all the questions and the comments that you have in the chat. Keep them coming. Keep them coming. As you see, we're at 46 minutes and we ain't even really got started. Okay. Next topic, which I think is great coming out of this one right here, is illusion versus delusion, right? And the assertion here is that your perspective is not reality. I'm going to say it again. I'm going to say it loud for the people in the back. Your perspective is not reality. I don't care if you call it my reality. It still is not reality. So the quote here is everything we see is perspective, not the truth. So the data here says 83% of conflicts arise from people treating subjective interpretations as objective facts. Now, that said, how would you describe the difference between illusion and delusion, and how do they affect our interpretations of reality?
We had something similar to this before, didn't we?
That was on Sunday, man.
It was.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't like it then either.
I know. That's why we need to talk about it.
How would you describe the difference between illusion and delusion, and how they affect your interpretation of reality? I just had to say it again. Give me a second.
Anybody?
Yeah, we did go over this last week, and illusion was something that's based off sensory, whereas you're experiencing something that may seem real to you, but since it's off the senses and whatnot, it may look like it's true, may look like it's real, but it's not. It could be a fallacy, whereas delusion is something where you have information that tells you something contradictory to what you believe, and you choose to believe what's wrong. Just like people say, we live in the best country in the world, whatever. But like stuff like that, that's delusion.
And how did they affect our interpretations of reality?
Because when you see it through the either illusion, when I'm looking at it, I'm thinking it's real, but it's not there. It's not even real. It's not there. But so I'm gonna treat it as such. Versus if I'm just walking in a delusional state, I'm choosing to be ignorant, and that using that whole cognitive dissonance really only works for so long.
I'm gonna be honest. I had to look them up so I could have a better understanding of both of them. Right. So when I looked up illusion, it talks about how it affects it. Illusion affects how we see reality, and delusion affects how we construct reality. So back with the illusion parts, it said it creates temporary misunderstandings, like they don't like me and I'm not good enough. And then when it comes to delusion, sometimes, you twist facts or you ignore evidence. The way I look at this, and I definitely don't want to make this political, but I've seen people on the internet and they say, well, hey, so and so, that's your president. And they say, well, that ain't my president. And I'm just like, regardless of whether or not that's a fact, regardless of how you believe or what your reality is, that person is sitting in that seat. Now, you can say that ain't my president. I didn't vote for him. Regardless, at the end of the day, that is the person who is who he is. Regardless if it's this 4 years, last 4 years, whatever like that, that person is in that. And then when the delusion, I see people, going in there and they twist facts all day long. And they'll say, well, this said this and this is this. And I'm just like, no, that's not true. And that's not true either, and then, so I see a lot of illusion and delusion when it comes to certain things like politics. And I think, if we talking about how it affects how do they affect our interpretations of reality, I think in certain cases, it can affect it in a negative way. It can affect it in a point to where you can't really see things for exactly what they are. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah. So when I did the same thing, I had to go look them up again because I remember Sunday Lisa gave us the definition. I just can't remember them off the top of my head. But so when I'm looking at illusion, I definitely go to the politics of it because especially in America where it's a bipartisan, right? So you either got one side or the other side. And I think when you live in a framework to where you can only see a singular view, it creates the condition for illusion, right? Because now we're talking about deceptive perspective of reality. And so I'm basing how I see reality off of these set conditions, that this is how the world works and this is how it should work. And everybody who don't see it within this frame, they're blind, and they're the one that's deceived. I think whenever you can't bring the whole scope in, you're definitely walking in an illusion, especially speaking of our politics, right?
Wouldn't that be delusion though?
Delusion.
No, because so maybe it's the way I'm thinking about it. Because when I'm hearing delusion is what we're saying, firmly held belief. Somebody
Look at it like this: if it's a perception, it's illusion. If it's a perspective, it's delusion.
I don't really have a big problem with the illusion either, because I think with the illusion, based off of this, I think, with understanding your viewpoint, your perspective or whatever can be adjusted, but I think when it comes to delusion, I think that's kind of negative.
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe. If you're open-minded, your illusions can be adjusted.
If you're open-minded, there you go.
I think so. What's hard for me to agree with you, I see what you're saying, because I was teetering there too as y'all were talking, but it's when I'm reading the definition, it's the word deceptive perspective that messes it up for me. If it's deceptive, then it's outside of reality.
I'm trying to understand the confusion at that point. You're saying that that's illusion?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
So if I may,
mm-hmm.
Everything that governs what you see comes from where?
That governs what you see?
Yeah, everything that governs what you see. Like, what governs what you see? Do you see reality? Do you?
I'm trying to...
Do you see? I expected better from you. Do you see do you see reality exactly like it is?
No.
No. So what governs that?
Those who control what's in front of me.
No, not those. What you believe. What you believe governs what you see. So now when you look at perception, perception is viewed through the lens of what you believe. Thoughts, belief governs thoughts, thoughts governs words. Yes. So what
guess
you see is governed through what you believe, right?
I guess I put belief on the side of delusion. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah.
So if it is perspective, it is delusion. If it's perception, it is illusion. But both still go through the lens of what you see. And the lens of what I see is governed. Therefore, like if I change what I believe, then what I see in reality actually changes. Yes, no, maybe so, could be. Possibly.
Yeah. But that goes back to when you said if you're open-minded. But that's why I said that's part of the reason why I said why I use politics, the bipartisan, because if you're not open-minded, you're in that tunnel.
Sure, absolutely.
And so that creates the illusions of reality.
Right. Sure. So, but if you're open-minded, then you're open to your assumptions being challenged. And you will be open to hearing and considering what somebody else is saying. And at the level of what they're saying, you're now comparing what they're saying to what you actually think. And then you use a meritocracy way of approach to it.
I look at it the opposite way. What you see becomes what you believe. And that's marketing 101. And that's why they put up billboards and they have commercials and TV shows so that they can go through your sensory organs and such, so you can start to believe, man, I need that hamburger, or I need that motorcycle, or I want this. Like, man, you just sitting there watching the commercial, like, man, I'm gonna go buy a pizza, because they fed that to you, fed it through your ears. That's why we call ourselves N's and B's and H's and stuff like that, because they fed it to us. So now our perception or our beliefs about who we are or who other people are come from that. When you go around the world, other people view us of what they seen on BET or what they seen on TV, not because they experienced us, but because it was fed to them.
Right. Then they grow up. That's like I'm not disagreeing with you. That's the immature mindset, right? The immature mindset, I believe it when I see it. But once you mature, it's like I will believe it until I see it. Right? Again, seeing is believing, immature mindset. More mature mindset, believe it until you see it. Go ahead, Garfield.
No, that's kind of where I was thinking about right there. Yeah, I don't have anything else I thought about, but I'm good.
Okay. Great. Listen, man, I greatly appreciate everybody's points, especially in the comments. Keep them coming. We're seeing them. We're trying to answer them in the midst of the conversation because, as you see, time ain't waiting on us, so we got to keep them rolling. No pun intended. So that being said, we're going to jump down to the next section, which is how ignorance spoils potential. I'll say again, how ignorance spoils potential. And keep in mind, ignorance is just not simply the absence of information. It is also the rejection of information as well. Okay. The assertion here is emotional literacy fuels self-sabotage. I say again, emotional literacy fuels self-sabotage. The quote here is unexpressed emotions will never die. They are buried alive and will come forth. They will come forth later in uglier ways. Sigmund Freud. The data here says 68% of men misidentify primary emotions, calling loneliness anger. That said, in what ways do mislabeling our feelings create unnecessary chaos? And when you think about chaos, don't always think external.
You got it? Oh, I thought I seen. Yeah, okay. When you said Freud, I was thinking about Martin when he said Freud said, bruh, man. But I think that when we're looking at mislabeling our feelings, if you can identify your own feelings, and that has to do with the maturity and the immaturity. If you can identify your feelings and you bottle them up, or you label them as that's just me, or you label them as that's how I grew up, or you put some type of tag on it to kind of hold on to it, or just to, just not deal with it, I think you can have that unnecessary chaos within or without, because you haven't grown to the point to where it's handled. So now when something comes up against it, you react a certain way, and you're going to stay in that vein, and you're going to stay in that immature state, that ignorant state, as you was on the previous slide, until a change is done from within, so that you can change not just your perspective, but how you see yourself and where you are in this whole thing.
I can see how this can be I don't know. I'm just looking at, if I'm thinking, I'm looking at like a car. They mislabel my car. They misdiagnose my vehicle when I take it into the shop, right? They saying, hey, your radiator leaking, but it's the water pump or something like that. Now I got to spend more money, go get it checked out again, only to come back and try to rectify the problem. So I think the same thing carries over into our feelings. If I'm feeling that, if I'm hurt, but it's coming off, or I'm telling everybody, well, I just don't care. You know what I mean? Now I'm not working on the right thing that I possibly need to be working on, or my feelings are coming from a place of I don't care versus I'm hurt, or if I focus on I'm hurt versus I don't care, it's something there. I don't know. I got those right there. I may not have all my thoughts together, but I think that what happens is when you mislabel your feelings, and how it creates that unnecessarily chaos. Again, it's like if you are saying one thing and you're working on one thing, you're not, it's going to cause chaos, because you're working on being, you walking around saying, I just don't care. But the reality of it is you're just hurt, and you're not working on the hurt piece. You're just walking around here saying, I just don't care about that. I don't care about that. And see, what that happens is the hurt is never getting addressed. And that's causing the unnecessary chaos in yourself, because you mislabeled exactly what's going on in your life. And I think it can have drastic issues for your personal self and anybody that you might be in a relationship with, because that can be a big issue, inside and out.
This is an interesting question, actually, because and I don't think you even had to give that addendum, because automatically when you talk about feelings and chaos, I think we all automatically thought internally, because to misdiagnose or mislabel a feeling means you don't really know what you're feeling. That alone is chaos, because having to deal with what you feel, once you get into a feeling, your automatic response is to deal with it, whether it's to express it, to maybe you think repressing it is the answer. Maybe you think finding somewhere to go yell, someone to scream at, or whatever, depending on whatever the feeling is. I think I'm feeling lonely, so you just go find the next person and crawl up next to and under. All right, but it ain't. Maybe it ain't loneliness that you're feeling, or maybe whatever it is. Maybe it's just you're missing it's something that a specific person brought to you. Being married brought to you. So now that you're no longer married, you think you feel lonely. No, you're just feeling that missing void that always been there. And getting up next to somebody else don't feel that. But you're saying I'm lonely, and you think the answer is just to go find someone new. That's not the right answer. And maybe, especially if it's not, well, whether it's loneliness or not, that's not the right answer, right? And so, only thing you're doing is you're fueling something that don't need to be fueled inside of you, and and you're never dealing with what the core issue is. And you wonder why no man is ever good enough no more. No woman is ever good, because you're trying to recreate something that you once had. And that's where the healing needs to take place, is with dealing with the relationship that is lost. And I think a lot of people don't, and I didn't mean to shift directly to relationships, but some feelings, I think, actually properly identifying your feelings sometimes come with accountability. And I think a lot of people, we run from accountability because we've been taught so much in this world that we're validated through our actions. That's how you felt. Do you, boo boo? Don't let nobody stop you. Don't, no, shut up. Get help. It's gonna be all right. Because that's not the answer. If the answer is always they just don't understand you, everybody don't understand you, nobody's smart enough. Because there's nothing new under the sun. Maybe the problem is just you got to deal with you.
I like that. I like that. I'm gonna go a little further back when you were. I would say that we probably should have ventured into the relationship conversation way before we started talking politics. Because the relationship conversation is where we can make change at. Politics, we cannot. Anyway, um, when looking at this question, first and foremost, and when you go back and listen to the some of the stuff that I talked about, especially the data, about 68% of men mislabel primary emotions. We got to understand what primary emotions is. What's the difference between a primary and a secondary emotion? And the primary emotions that we feel a lot of times are like they're internal, they're more instinctual, more primitive, if you will. And then as after that primary emotion hit, then the secondary emotion comes in. And then the secondary emotion becomes the one that is projected as the one that's shared or whatever the case may be. I would say in relation to this, what is within will come without. I'll say that part again. Whatever is within will come without. That's why I keep saying you can't put on the facade for but so long. You can put on the best version of yourself. You can put a lipstick on a pig. You can put lipstick on a pig, but eventually it will be recognized as a pig. I'm sorry, it is what it is. So and Gaddy, I know you talked about the last relationship, but that is if that person in that last relationship did everything right. Let's be completely honest. Nobody falls in that category. I'm sorry. So let's go beyond that. What did you bring into that relationship that contributed to the decline of that relationship? Where did that thing come from? That's the root cause of it all. So you're going to have to go all the way back to that. That's why I keep stressing no one is innocent, even though we like to paint this great elaborate picture that we are innocent. Stop it. You're kidding yourself. And for people who know, they're looking at you and looking at you sideways like, yeah, you still got some work you need to do. Right. When we mislabel those feelings and we don't necessarily address them, my feelings, I don't address them. If I'm in a relationship, situationship, whatever you want to call it these days, if I'm in that, if I don't talk with my partner about the feelings that I actually have openly and honestly, right, then they themselves, they don't know what it is. And now they're left with the volcano erupting. And then I'm expecting them to be able to listen to and take part in the erupting volcano. No, they didn't sign up for that. That is low hanging fruit. Stop trying to convince people that, oh, well, if you don't, that's wrong. No, I'm going back. I'm with you. I'm with you all day long on that, bro. Listen, if it don't work on one hand, it shouldn't work on the other, right? My patience should not be taken as something that you get to take for granted at your disposal when you want to use it. Sorry. No, it don't work that way. Again, let's do the internal work. Whatever my primary emotion is, if I can own it, address it, do the necessary work to understand why that primary emotion takes hold of me the way it does, and then causes the response outwardly that it does, then I can change the response. But only when I address that thing within. And it's not an easy thing to do, I get it. But at the end of the day, it's a necessary thing to do. So that's just kind of like my point there. Um, you know, and that takes us to the next talking point, which is the victim as a predator. I'll say it again, the victim as a predator. Now, let me give this before we go forward. This is not saying that every victim is a predator, because I know somebody's thinking that already. Y'all know how it is. Cut it out. All right. Victim language is covert manipulation. I say it again. Victim language is covert manipulation. Self victimization is the art of making suffering profitable. Robert Glover. And the data says endless trauma references decrease listener empathy by 62% within 5 minutes. That said, gentlemen, how can I tell when my hardship story becomes a projection of an emotional ransom?
I was thinking about this for the last couple of minutes. I scrolled over and looked at the banners. I was trying to prepare for this question. I was like, my response is this: how can I tell when my hardship story becomes the projection of an emotional ransom? Is when it becomes manipulative. That's where I want to start with. The reason being, I'm thinking about, I'll use me. So when I'm having a conversation with somebody and I go back and I'm like, oh yeah, well, my dad was on drugs, right? So in general, that's probably going to bring the conversation down if it is maybe elevated or whatever, because now, I talk about that up here and whatever we talking about now, I'm just gonna use y'all. Now I got y'all by emotional ransom, because now maybe Roland ain't gonna throw that jab at me. Maybe Coach ain't gonna say this because they may be treading lightly because Garfield just talked about, his trauma and how his dad was on drugs and stuff like that. So I'm just using y'all as an example. And I think that's an example of when you start holding somebody emotionally ransom, because now they may or may not be able to express themselves. Maybe they want to, because now you're manipulating them with some trauma or something like that, or some hardship story from the past, or from the recent future. So how can I tell when my hardship story becomes the projection of an emotional ransom? And I think, again, when it becomes manipulative.
I think when you pigeonhole the focus, to this one thing, this one event, this everything was horrible, it was yada, yada, yada. I think that's when it can become manipulative, when the focus is pigeonholed, because everybody can see whatever it is, if it's something destructive, like as it being destructive. But do I look at it from a holistic point of view, or do I just pigeonhole it and focus on this aspect of it and leave it at that? Because I think there are some things that are nuanced where you can look, and not that it's great, but you can see, okay, I can see this and I can see that. So now my perspective changes because I have different information versus just the pigeonhole view.
Man, I got so much to say in response to things, but I'm just gonna say my piece and leave everything else alone. Cause I agree, but those agree but things. But I would say when it becomes irrational, because if I say if I ask for to be reparated for something that has happened, and that has happened, and then I can I've received my reparations, and I continue to use that same guilt to hold you to future obligations that you and otherwise wouldn't take, then that's ransom to me. But if I'm asking for my pay, uh, pay me what I've earned. You've taken from me. You've done this for me. You kept, and that is never given. Then I don't think is irrational, unless there has been steps to bring me back to where, or give me opportunities to get to where I would have been had action had not been taken. Because until then, every time I look at my position, I'm always going to see that my position would be different had you not done. Right. And so, and I take that approach, and I'm trying not to do too much, but I take that approach because even when we talk about our people, I hear sometimes we all can get annoyed, or we can all can get emotionally involved with what we're chanting as a people. But some people, I believe, are irrational into some sense, because you want people to treat you superior because of what happened in the past. And some people saying, just reprimand me, because there was over 200 communities that were thriving, that were burnt to the ground. How can you say that we're inherently what you see today, when you never gave us an opportunity to be anything else? Every time we got better, you destroyed it. So that is not irrational, because you've never paid the reprimand that you promised. Instead, you give reparations to others that were not affected by anything done here. So when I look at it, because I know some people get tired of hearing Black people say this is what y'all did. Well, if the majority of us are still not living in conditions based upon, so hey, what do we do to get? And I get it here. What do we do to get us out, right? But the cries of those people who are looking at their condition, I think it's hard for them not to see it from, well, had this not happened, maybe we could have been. And there's always going to be a maybe, because we don't know what we would have done with what. But that's why I go with the irrational aspect of it.
Man, that was good. I'm laughing at Maya, because Maya told his divine appointment. You said that like I said it, but she didn't say it that way. She just spelled Maya wrong. Anyway, I love this question because I have several answers that I can give. First and foremost, I'll start with my hardship story. And if you really stop and think about it, it really sounds like, my truth. It really sounds like my reality, my this, my that, right? It's just your perspective of the story, man. That's it. That's all it is. And your perspective does not take into account the entirety of reality. Let's just first and foremost start there. Your perspective of your hardship story does not take into the account of the entire reality. So if you can't hear someone else asking you a different thing about your story, then it's because you're trying to project it as emotional ransom. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, I'm not finished. Also, if it's the most dominant story that you know, if it's the story that you pitch every time because you act like you're a keynote speaker every time you get around people, you're using it as an emotional ransom. In fact, if you believe your story is the most important story out of everybody's story that you're talking about, you're using it as an emotional. I don't know. I feel like Jeff Foxworthy. You might be a redneck here. That's what it's like. That's what I'm sorry. I hate to say it that way. You might be emotionally scarred if this is what you're doing, right? That's what happens. Get good at sharing the lessons that you learned from your story. Oh, wait. If you had not learned the lesson from your story, you might be projecting it as emotional rant. All of this stuff is true. It don't feel good. I get it. But at some point, adults don't look to feel good. They look to move in the direction of he who is good. So now when we look at it from that perspective, it ain't about right or wrong. It's about what we're supposed to be doing as mature adults. And if you're still sharing the same story that you shared 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, because you're looking for people to be moved emotionally because of your story, then you are projecting it as an emotional ransom. It's that simple. All right.
So when Gaddy was trying to get them amens,
Hey,
I know he's all right.
you know what? You know what? Yeah. All right. That's going to move us down to the last section because of time. And this section is simply just that: own it. Right. The assertion here is authenticity requires emotional ownership. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. Carl Jung. Oh, I'm sorry, Carl Jung. That's how it's pronounced. People using I feel language resolve conflicts 5 times faster than accusatory speakers. Now, let me pause here for a second, because if you're believing that what we're saying, right, if you're believing that what we're saying is every time you start off a conversation, I feel like, no, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about in the midst of a conflict, You're owning how you're feeling in the midst of the conflict and not saying, well, you did this, when you did this, that, and the third. No. What you're saying is that when this happens, I feel as though this. That's what we're talking about. So don't start patting yourself on the back if your primary, introduction into every sentence you say is "I feel like." Nobody cares. Okay. The question here is, what happens? What happens in a disagreement when we replace "you made me feel" with "I experienced this as"? What do you think happens in a conversation?
Well, one of the things it does is shift the focus off of the other person and then kind of puts it on you. Because, I can say, well, you made me feel like crap. And that's different than, I experienced the way that you spoke to me, yada, yada, yada. So I think what it does initially is that it shifts the focus from attack mode to more, I don't know if it's the right word, but more of a more of a reality. I don't know. But again, I think it shifts it off of the other person to more about, I don't want to say me, but more about what we have going on at the time. And it takes away the other person getting in that space. Oh, it was one of them other questions. I don't know. This goes back to something else in my mind. Yeah, I'm gonna stop right there. But I ain't gonna stop. I'm just gonna say I'm gonna keep it short. What happens in a disagreement when we place "you made me feel" with "I experienced this as" is it shifts the focus from the other person, and it takes you're not in attack mode.
I like it.
I felt like I should just be the guy to go against the grain on this one. Because just because I'm me and I'm, I don't hate conflict, So with that being said, I feel like sometimes shifting from "you made me feel" can give you an emotional relief to back out of responsibility as well. Because maybe you did do a thing. And if we're in a relationship, the only reason why I'm coming with "you made me feel" is because it's repetitive to a point to where it now, and speaking as men, we get to a place where we don't like to feel this a certain type of way. And so sometimes instead of going down that road to where you're going to make me feel disrespected, or I'm going to feel disrespected or whatever, we'll just shut down. But the first attempt before we shut down is to bring it up and talk about it. And once you mishandle that, we never move back in. We'll just shut that part of the relationship down, because we don't want that emotion we express to be mishandled or to be ignored again, right? So sometimes, and I'm saying sometimes, so sometimes when I make an attempt to shift the hostility away from you being attacked, can give you that window of evading accountability, because now I put the accountability on me, which is always a good thing, right? To take some level of accountability of how you feel, regardless of what action led to it. But I need you to recognize what you did, because this is going to be problematic if you continue to move this way.
And I'm going to start where you ended, because that's where I was going. When I say I experienced this as, it's me giving you the opportunity to see how something that you've done or said affected me. I don't have to say what you made me feel and all this other stuff, because I'm taking it like, hey, I'm taking the ownership of it, and I'm letting you know. And if we're in a relationship and it matters, or if conversation matters to you, then you will do the necessaries to either change or explain or do something to correct what's going on. Because right now I allowed you to know that, hey, I'm in a certain space because of what just took place. So how are we going to rectify this as adults? And it puts you in the grown man's position versus me, little boy, versus me putting you in the child's place, or me automatically starting with confrontation. Because when I say you, I don't care. When somebody says me, I'm like, I ain't do that. Or me, and it's like I'm looking within versus if you say I experienced, now I got to look within with a different mentality. It's like, man, I didn't necessarily mean it like that. And then I can convey what I meant exactly.
Can I add some more? All right. When you say you made me feel, that other person is not responsible for how I feel at the same time. Then when I go back to, I want to use respect, right? So when I say you made me feel disrespected, when I reversed it and I say, hey, look, this is what you did, and this was disrespectful, I think it also offers, it give the person, and this may be to what you were saying, Ro, it give the other person the opportunity to kind of see it from a different point of view. It's like, you know what, maybe I was disrespectful. You know what I'm saying? And it may give them an opportunity to, it may actually even be able to help the conversation going forward, because they may not have seen that they were being disrespectful, but now I brought it to your attention. And it wasn't just about how I feel, because even though somebody can be disrespectful to me, it still is how I feel, or how I respond to the disrespect. So you can't make me feel disrespected. What I'm going to tell you is that was disrespectful. So I get everything that y'all are saying. And after an hour and 27 minutes, the pieces are starting to come together a lot better. So
And what I love about this conversation, because as I experience what's all, like you said, in this hour and 27 minutes, the crazy part is I agree with the perspective that y'all are articulating, but my experiences does not allow me to see it. I'm just being truthful, and like,
Mhm.
now what I take accountability is like, hey, maybe I need to choose better who I go into relationship with, the type of people, because I've dealt with I've dealt with people in an intimate relationship level to where there was no, you couldn't give them that wiggle room. Well, I experienced it as well. That's your experience. Go deal with it. And I walk, and it's like, dang, we can't get through anything together. We can't fix our mess together. Well, no, not if I don't believe I'm a part of the mess.
Oh man, oh man, my brothers, I love y'all. Yeah, I'm. So here's the funny part about it. I love where everybody is within the space of this, because I think what you see in the comments, like everybody's point of view is valid. Everybody's point of view on here is valid, and even when you find the points of views that seems contradictory, even in the contradictions, both points of views are valid. Um, like I think somebody said, I think it was Maya said, like if you made me feel a certain way, it is what it is. You made me feel a certain way. That's valid from that person's perspective, right? But then you also heard it said, like, well, I'm not responsible for how you feel, right? That's a valid assertion. So I think that's part of the struggle that we experience in the space of relationship. And I think to a certain degree, both things can be true up to a certain point, right? Am I responsible for how you feel? No. But can I do something to make you feel a particular type of way? Yes. Now, where does adulting jumps in? Like where does adulting jump in, and since it's getting close to that time of season, grab the reins on this reindeer and rein it back in so that we can actually find a way to communicate. Yeah, I did that. Yeah, find a way to where we can harmonize together. Because I think at a certain point, kids fight on the playground. You know what I'm saying? So at some point, we got to mature beyond that, right? Can a person say something that is hurtful? Sure. Is that their normal way of existing? Probably not. Oh, okay. Well, maybe then there might be some truth behind what they say. Not necessarily saying the thing that they said was right, but maybe the information that they're giving you based upon how they're feeling in that particular point in time is right, even though we'll say how I feel is right, but that person can't express how they feel. So you see how these waters can be extremely muddy when we start going back and forth on opposite sides. So at some point we have to make a decision. Am I in it for me or am I in it for we? Because if I'm in it for we, then we'll have conversation that's conducive for we. If I'm in it for me, then most of the things that come out of my mouth will talk about me. That moves me to what that young man just said. I need to be more selective of who I get in relationship with, because all I got to do is listen to how you think, because I'm sorry, listen to how you talk, because how you talk will reflect how you think, and how you think will reveal what you believe. And what you believe is the foundation of how you're going to behave in every relationship you're in. And if that's the case, when I do attempt to have these conversations by replacing you made me feel with I experience it as, then that's what I get. That's how you experience. That's not how I experienced it. Mm, okay, very well. I get it. And I think that's part of the issue. A lot of the times we're having these conversations to where where it's supposed to move us in the direction of what is right and righteousness, to where some people who are hearing it, and that's not talking about anybody on this panel or anybody in the comments, right? We're talking outside of y'all because y'all are great and wonderful people. But the people over here who hear it, that like to be combative, that like to stand their ground, right? They like to argue their point, they like to talk about their experiences all the time, right? Like those people ain't trying to hear that. That's why I keep saying we're not all in it for the same reason. We're not all moving in the same direction. So yes, I'm with you on that one, Gaddy. I need to be more selective with who I get in relationship with. Okay, I do apologize. We went a little bit over. I appreciate you guys sticking with us, but that takes us to the bittersweet moment, which is our final thoughts.
Great conversation. It took me about an hour and 20 something minutes before the pieces of the puzzle, before there was enough pieces of the puzzle for me to really see what the picture was. And I definitely appreciate all the gentlemen here having this conversation. Um, Coach started off the show talking about we really don't need no definitions in proper grammar. We really don't need definitions for you, feelings, and reality. But as we started going through the conversation, maybe we did, or maybe we came up with some along the way. So I definitely want to say that it is definitely worth going back and rewatching the video. I would suggest going back and start with coming up with your definitions of your feelings, you in reality, and then watch the show. And I think that after that, go back and have a post op, and then go back and revisit your thoughts and on your definitions on you, your feelings, and reality. So overall, for me, it was just a fun conversation. Well worth going back and watch it. And if I got to add, just my small little information would be was to go and really take a deeper dive into what these three words mean. What really is you? Who really are you? You know what I mean? What is it about your feelings, and then what is true reality, and I think, if you have a really good understanding of those, I think that'd be a very great thing. And that's my final thought.
Love the conversation. Appreciate being invited up. I think that when we're talking about feelings and reality, sometimes we can be callous to the feelings portion because we think that person's feelings, that's not my responsibility. And I believe that wholeheartedly. It's not my responsibility. But sometimes how I respond, how I act, how I talk, how I conduct myself can have an impact on somebody and make them feel a certain way. So I have to acknowledge that. So feelings are important. And if you're in relationship with someone else, that means that it's not always about you. So when you are saying, if you are in this mature state, now I want everybody around me to be in a mature state so we can communicate in a proper manner versus reacting off of emotions and off of feelings in that nature. So everybody's not going to be at the same plane at the same time. So as we grow, I want you to grow. As we communicate, I want you to feel heard. I want you to feel understood. I want you to be able to feel how you feel, because how you feel is based off of how you were raised, your emotions, and your everything. So if I'm discounting your feelings, I'm discounting you. Now, if I'm acknowledging, okay, you may feel a certain way, and that is you, now we have something to talk about. We can converse on that versus me just discounting and say, well, that's on you. Go on and figure yourself out. See, I think sometimes we can be a little callous when it comes to the other person's feelings when we aren't in that same state of mind.
I wanted you to keep talking because I was still taking more mental notes and writing. But man, first off, I love this conversation. I appreciate you, Coach, for bringing this one up. But reality, what is real, right? What is real is what's shaped by the Most High, right? Reality is what He has created. Man can distort, man can manipulate, but the truth is in Him, right? So with that, I started thinking about self. Well, can self and reality exist? Yes, self and reality can coexist together when you shape yourself after Him. You know, I had to flip it back for my final thought. So when I shape myself after Him based upon His word, then I can truly exist in His reality, and then I can begin to move not away from my feelings or outside of my feelings, because you will feel because you are human, right? But regardless of my emotions and my feelings, I can begin to move. Why? Because one, I know that what I'm doing is right according to His word, because I'm moving according to His instructions. And two, I'm not worried about the consequences, because I do understand that because I molded myself after Him and I'm after Him and I'm chasing after Him, now I fall into the realm of, well, all things are still working for my good. And I think that's where a lot of people want to be, in that space to where they know that everything is working for their good. I'm trying to follow Him because I want everything to work for my good. Why? Because a lot of our realities may not look great from our perception. Things may not look right from our perception, but I'm only reassured there when I know that I'm in alignment. Because He says, for all things work together for the good of those who love Him and are called according to His purpose. Well, if you love me, you keep my commandments. That's all I got.
Man, listen, I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Go back and look at it again. I think you will hear some things differently. Your feelings and reality. And of course, we like to start with reality because I think, you know, most people want to know what reality is, but I think we need to start with you, because I think a lot of times most of us don't know who we are. We don't even know what we like. It's a lot of confusion, and of course, as you guys heard, it brought to bear the interpretation of perspective and perception and what that looks like. You heard that being brought out through the lens of illusion and delusion. And there's a lot of delusion that is being articulated across the airways and in face to face. So I think that's where we'll start. Start with you, right? And then move forward. Remember, this is inside out work, not outside in. When we start with reality as being the something external and didn't work our way backwards, we're doing it backwards. You got to start internal, right? Understand the thing that shapes you to be who you are. Understand what you really and truly do believe, and then go back once you understand that. Then look at how that shapes your perspective and how that shapes your perception. Then, what are some of the things that your feelings are wrapped around? What are your feelings? Some of the things that your feelings are caught up in. Listen, I'm going to say it like this, and I'm sorry it's not going to sound good, but it's not against any one person. There's some things that you were taught growing up that wasn't right. There's some things that you experienced in your early childhood years wasn't right. There's some things that you experienced in your adulthood that wasn't right. And a lot of us are still holding on to that thing as though it is right. And then what we do is we live life forward from that point, trying to protect the thing because we're not looking to be exposed according to that thing. We call it a stronghold, right? So you have strongholds in your life that you're trying to protect and still be in the space with others. And every time they come close to it or come up against or ask to do something in relation to or something looks similar to, then you start to fight, tooth and nail, because you got to protect that stronghold, protect your perception of yourself as it pertains. So now that becomes problematic. And so then you go in and out of relationship, in and out of interconnectedness, in and out of this job and that job, and you create bad environments wherever you go simply because you think every place you go is the reason why you experience what you experience, but fail to realize that you're the common denominator in every last one of them. You create the reality that you experience whenever you go, wherever you go, because of the unharmonized and untampered and unrealized pain or emotion or whatever it is that you're trying to protect. And you will still blame everybody else because these words will roll off your back like water off of a duck back. So that said, that's my final thought. I got it. It can be a difficult conversation, but it doesn't have to be. It's a much needed conversation though, because illusions and delusion, as we all know, are in this world and we're dealing with them daily. Now the question is how are you going to deal with it? So that being said, greatly appreciate your presence here tonight. Everybody on the panel, as always, you guys are rock stars. I greatly appreciate you. Everybody that was in the comments, man, you guys will lighten it up. We greatly appreciate you and value you. Make sure that you're with us tomorrow morning, 10:30 a.m. for the Hearts of Women. It'll be the women and the men working collaboratively, not competitively, right? That's what we do over here. So that being said, you guys enjoy the rest of your evening. Let the best version of yourself be a blessing to somebody else, and we'll see you again next week.